You think you're the one deciding your own destiny, but in reality, you're not. It's what you do every single day, repeatedly and unconsciously, that shapes your entire life. Not the major decisions, not the explosive moments, but the smallest, most consistent, most silent choices. They hide within your habits. You don't realize it, but habits are the invisible operating system of your life. They govern everything: how you think, how you react, how you work, how you love, how you eat, how you use your time, how you handle failure. If you keep repeating things that are weak, patchy, and impulsive, you're programming yourself to become a version that is easily defeated. If you keep repeating procrastination, resignation, and leniency with yourself, then don't be surprised when life gives you nothing of real value in return. On the other hand, the people you admire, those you believe are more talented, stronger, or simply luckier than you, really just have one key difference. They've turned the right things into habits. They don't wait for inspiration to work. They don't need reminders to take action. They're not always motivated. But they have a system, and that system is built from precise habits. You can't control circumstances. You can't guarantee opportunities will come your way. But you can always control how you respond. And how you respond is always a product of what you've repeated long enough to become instinct. That's what a habit is. Good habits are success-generating machines. You don't have to force yourself to work every day if working is already part of your identity. You don't have to remind yourself to eat healthily if eating right is second nature. You don't have to fight temptation if that temptation no longer appeals to you. That's not iron will. That's the optimization of habit. You'll no longer feel exhausted when every right action is performed without needing to think about it. But bad habits are the opposite. They don't show up with terrifying faces. They usually sneak in as small, pleasant, seemingly harmless things. One act of procrastination, one bite of junk food, one late night, one scroll through your phone. At first, it feels like nothing. But you're teaching your brain this is normal, and your brain, a fast learner, will start to treat it as the main route. Once the groove is carved, you don't need to try anymore. You'll slide right into it easily, unconsciously, without effort. And that's why bad habits are so dangerously destructive. They can tear down your career, your health, your mind, and your character, while you still believe you're doing fine. The problem is, you think you can use willpower to fight it. No. Willpower is not a sustainable weapon. You can't go head-to-head with something that's been programmed into your nervous system through thousands of repetitions. Every time you have to use willpower, you're already losing. Because willpower only exists when you don't have a system. Successful people don't rely on emotion. They don't wait to feel energized before they work. They don't let mood dictate action. They build systems. And a system is just a collection of the right habits, trained over time, repeated, to the point they become part of the body. If you're struggling with a sense of stagnation, exhaustion, or lack of direction, it's not because you're weak. It's because you're relying on habits that are quietly tearing you apart. Every minute that passes without doing anything is teaching your brain that waiting is normal. Every time you react negatively instead of practicing self-control, you're teaching your brain that anger is an escape route. And when you repeat those things enough, you lose the ability to control yourself while still thinking you're doing fine. But here's the good news. This can change, because habits are not destiny. They are a result of repetition. And anything created by repetition can be reprogrammed by different repetition. The problem is, you can't change if you only focus on the outcome. You have to begin with a system that produces the outcome. That's the habit. You want to live with more discipline? Don't just write down goals. Write down the chain of behaviors you'll repeat every single day. You want to be more successful? Don't ask, what do I want to achieve? Ask, what must I do every day so that success is no longer out of reach? You don't succeed because you want to. You succeed because you've built a chain of actions that makes success inevitable. And that chain is habit. If your day starts with procrastination, distraction, and missed commitments, don't blame the future, because the future is just an extension of today. I'm telling you this not to make you feel guilty, but to help you see you haven't failed. You're just living inside a system that doesn't work yet. And that system can be changed if you know where to begin. In the next section, I'll show you the first way to do that, not by stopping, but by tracing it back to the root. Because behavior is just the surface. If you don't go beneath it, habit will return. But if you handle the root, you reclaim control. And you don't just break old habits, you rewrite your life. You can't break a habit if you only deal with its surface. Behavior is a symptom, not the cause. You see yourself procrastinating, scrolling through your phone, eating uncontrollably, speaking negatively, but you don't pause to ask, what's underneath driving all of these actions? It's because you ignore the root that you stay stuck in the same cycle. You try to stop, you force yourself to stay committed, you set goals, install apps, and tell yourself this time will be different, but before long you're right back where you started. Why? Because you're fighting the consequences while the real cause continues to live stronger, deeper, and harder to grasp than you imagined. I'm telling you this to wake you up. Every bad habit you have is a temporary solution to an unresolved emotional need. You don't procrastinate because you're lazy. You procrastinate because you want to avoid discomfort, the feeling of not knowing where to start, the fear of failure, or simply the accumulated fatigue you can't even name. You don't overeat because you're hungry. You eat because you're seeking quick comfort to fill a void in your mind. You don't spend hours on your phone because you're relaxing. You do it because you're avoiding silence, the kind that forces you to face yourself. And here's the most important part. If you don't identify that core, you will never truly stop. You might force yourself to change for a few days or weeks, but you'll return because the original mechanism is still intact. Habits don't form in a vacuum. They are reactions to a sequence of triggers, an emotion, a situation, a repeated context that eventually becomes instinctive. Every time you feel tired, you open YouTube. Every time you feel anxious, you reach for food. Every time you're stressed at work, you bury yourself in social media. And you repeat this long enough that your body no longer needs to think, it just does. It reacts, it's pre-programmed, and then you call it your personality, but no, it's just a faulty program that hasn't been updated. If you want to break this, you have to start with one thing, observation. Not of the behavior itself, but the moment the behavior appears. Where are you? Who are you with? What are you feeling right before it happens? What is your body telling you? What is your mental state in that instant? Have you noticed that you tend to snack when you're alone at night? Or that you only procrastinate when an email arrives from someone who stresses you out? Or that you start thinking negatively after specific conversations that make you feel unworthy? Don't look for the behavior, look for the trigger. Because if you can untangle the starting point, you no longer have to rely on willpower to fight it. One of the biggest mistakes is trying to eliminate a habit without replacing it. When you remove an action, you create a gap, and that gap will be filled either by an old behavior or a new bad habit in a different form. You can't just remove the bad, you must install something better, something that satisfies the same emotional need, but in a healthier way. If you tend to eat to relieve stress, replace it with light movement, walking, stretching, deep breathing. If you scroll your phone to avoid loneliness, replace it with calling a positive friend or writing in a journal. If you procrastinate because you feel overwhelmed, break the task into steps so small there's no room for avoidance. What you need is not a break. You need a new version of response, a version that's intentional, constructive, and restores you instead of depleting you. And let me say this clearly, that replacement doesn't need to be perfect. You'll have good days, and you'll have days where you slip. Don't think every relapse means you're back to square one. No, every time you notice it, you grow stronger. Every time you choose the new action instead of the old, even just once out of 10, is one time you're reprogramming your system. Habits don't change with breakthroughs. They change through conscious repetition. The more consistent you are, the weaker the old habit becomes, and soon you'll look back at who you once were and feel like you're staring at a stranger. Don't aim at the behavior, aim at the cause. Don't try to force yourself to be better. Create an environment, a system, a new response that naturally leads you in the right direction. And don't set a goal of being 100% right. Set a goal of recovering quickly when you're wrong. Because the difference between those who succeed and those who don't doesn't lie in who makes fewer mistakes. It lies in who corrects them fast. You are not your bad habit, you're just someone currently living under its influence. And that can change. but only if you're brave enough to face the root, the part no one teaches you how to confront, the part you often avoid, deny, or downplay, the part that if you dare to face it, you won't just change your behavior, you'll reclaim control of yourself. You cannot change your life without changing your environment. Most people believe they failed because they lack determination, motivation, or willpower. But the truth is, they're simply trying to change within a space that doesn't allow them to change. You can't quit coffee if every morning you walk into your kitchen and the smell of coffee is already waiting for you. You can't stop procrastinating if your workspace always has YouTube playing, your phone within reach, and email notifications constantly pinging. You can't focus if your environment keeps pulling you into distraction. The problem isn't that you're weak, it's that you're living in a structure where doing the wrong thing is far too easy. Every habit has a starting point, and that starting point, more often than not, lies within the environment you place yourself in each day. The environment is not neutral. It is an invisible force that shapes your behavior before you even realize it. You think you're consciously choosing your actions, but in reality, you're just reacting to the signals around you. A lit up phone screen, a chair that's too comfortable, a coffee shop that's too familiar, a loud notification. Each of these tiny details contributes to programming your repeated behavior. If you want to break an old habit, don't start by blaming yourself. Start by reassessing where you live, where you work, where you spend most of your time. Ask, what habits is this environment reinforcing? How is it making the wrong behavior easier? How is it making the right behavior harder? Bad habits don't exist in isolation, they survive because the environment allows them to. And environment isn't just physical space, it's everything around you. Objects, sounds, colors, scents, people, lighting, even the placement of your chair in the room. Every element is either moving you closer to the best version of yourself or pulling you back into the old model you're trying to escape. And in this battle, if you don't restructure your environment, you're playing on the home field of your bad habits. The strategy isn't to increase willpower. It's to increase friction with the bad habits, make them annoying, hard to reach, inconvenient, make doing the wrong thing exhausting, time-consuming, and uncomfortable. If you snack too much, stop buying snacks. If you stay up too late, unplug the TV, leave your phone in another room. If you keep scrolling social media, log out, install blockers. Set a password you can't remember. This isn't childish, it's intelligent design because your brain always chooses the easiest path. If wrong is easier than right, you'll choose wrong. But if right becomes easier than wrong, you'll choose right. Almost without effort. At the same time, you must reduce friction with good behaviors. Make them obvious, accessible, ready at hand. If you want to read more, put the book on your pillow each night. If you want to drink more water, keep a bottle right in front of you. If you want to wake up early, place your alarm far away so you have to get up to turn it off. If you want to exercise, lay out your workout clothes the night before. Don't wait for inspiration. Arrange everything so that when you wake up, you just step into a pre-built system. I'm telling you this not based on theory. I live this way. I design my workspace so every detail serves speed, focus, and execution. There's no room for waste, no room for whim. Because I know that if the environment doesn't support you, your mind will be pulled off track, no matter how disciplined you are. And here's the part most people don't want to hear, but you need to. The people around you are the most powerful part of your environment. You are being programmed by the behaviors of those you spend the most time with. You don't realize it, but you slowly start talking like them, thinking like them, reacting like them. You can't maintain discipline if the person you have dinner with always complains. You can't stay focused if your friends are always procrastinating, making excuses, saying it's just today. You'll be influenced whether you want to or not. That's human nature. If you're truly serious about change, have the courage to look back. Who is pulling you back? Who makes you feel okay about doing the wrong thing? Who is quietly justifying the very habits you're trying to quit? Don't cut everyone off, but limit your time. Increase your exposure to people with higher standards than yours. People who act instead of complain. People who live by principles, not emotions. When you're in an environment where doing the right thing is the norm, you no longer need to try so hard to live right. You just flow with the current. And that current pushes you forward. The beautiful part is you can create that environment. You can choose a different workspace. You can rearrange your room. You can turn off the devices that drain your time and attention. You can schedule time with people who make you better. You can't change the entire world, but you can absolutely change the environment that directly affects you every day. And when you do that, you no longer need to fight. Good behavior will come naturally, easily, consistently, because you're no longer resisting your environment. You're being lifted by it. If you don't change your environment, you will always feel that change is hard. But when you deliberately design your life to eliminate the wrong and support the right, you'll notice something strange. Change no longer requires effort. It becomes inevitable. You don't act based on what you want. You act based on who you believe you are. And that's the truth most people overlook. They try to change behavior without changing identity. They try to exercise, eat healthy, stay focused, while still repeating one single phrase in their minds. I'm not consistent. I have no discipline. I always quit halfway. They stick old labels on themselves and then wonder why they can't live differently. But it's no mystery. Every behavior is the result of identity, and if you hold on to the old identity, all your efforts will be temporary, never sustainable. You say you want to change, but have you truly examined the story you keep telling yourself about who you are? Deep down, what kind of person do you believe you are? Someone weak who always fails, or someone learning how to win? Someone who gives up, or someone who endures and bounces back? A victim of the past, or the architect of the future? Identity isn't just what you see in the mirror. It's the silent voice in your head, the one that speaks every time you stumble. And if that voice is still your old version, you'll fall back into old patterns. No matter what you say you want, you can't build a new house on an old foundation. You can't act like a disciplined person while still holding on to the identity of someone who isn't. Because your brain craves consistency. It will do whatever it takes to align your actions with the image you hold in your mind. If you see yourself as a procrastinator, you'll keep procrastinating not because you want to, but because your brain believes that's normal. And even if you act differently, finish your work on time, wake up early, resist temptation, you'll feel like you're faking it. You won't believe that's your real self, and that feeling will pull you back to the old version. That's not a lack of ability, that's an identity that hasn't been updated. To create real change, you have to do the opposite. Rebuild your identity first, then your behavior. But not by visualizing or speaking empty words, by generating new evidence day by day, action by action. Repetition of behavior is the fastest way to rewrite identity. You don't need to believe you're disciplined right now, but you can wake up on time 3 days in a row. You don't need to think you're strong today, but you can get through a hard workout or say no to something you used to give in to. Every right action is a brick. The more bricks you lay, the stronger your new identity becomes. Your brain doesn't believe in words, it believes in proof. Start with simple things, very small, but consistent. Every time you perform a positive action, you're not just changing the outcome, you're sending a signal to yourself, this is who I am. And if you do it often enough, clearly enough, your brain will start to believe it's the truth. You won't need motivation, you won't need discipline. You'll simply be the kind of person who lives that way. Just like brushing your teeth every morning, not because you're inspired, but because you believe you're someone with good hygiene. The behavior stops being effort. It becomes a reflection of identity. Another thing you must be mindful of is the language you use to talk about yourself. Every sentence you say is a command to your brain. If you constantly say, I never finish anything, I always quit, I'm too soft, then don't be surprised when your actions match those words. Your brain is simply doing its job, keeping you consistent with the image you've created. But if you start saying, I no longer let bad habits control me, you're sending a new command. At first, it will feel unfamiliar, but if you act according to it, it will become your new version. You don't have to wait until you fully believe in yourself to start. Do the opposite. Act first. The belief will follow. Behave as if you already are the version you want to become. If you want to be someone healthy, act like it. If you want to be someone focused, live that way. Identity doesn't fall from the sky. It's built by the things you choose to do when no one's watching, when no clear results are visible. That's when you're reprogramming yourself. And don't wait for the day you completely change. That day doesn't exist. What exists is a chain of accumulation, a sequence of small actions, each One, a vote for the person you're becoming. The more consistently you vote for the version you want to be, the less room there is for the person you used to be. Let every action today be a quiet declaration. I don't live like I used to anymore. Changing your identity isn't just a psychological theory, it's the foundation of all sustainable change. If you don't repair the core, your behavior will always snap back. But when you rewrite your identity, when you truly see yourself as someone new, everything else will follow automatically. You won't need to try. You'll simply live as the person you know you've become. Every habit you're stuck in is a closed loop. It's not a random behavior, not a momentary slip-up. It's a conditioned sequence, repeated long enough to become an automatic program. Trigger, action, reward. You hear a notification, you check your phone. You feel satisfied. You feel anxious, you open the fridge. You feel comforted. You face a difficult task, you procrastinate. You feel temporarily safe. The action happens so fast that you don't even realize it. It begins before you're even aware of what you're doing. That's why you can't break a habit with willpower alone, because by the time you notice, the loop has already reached the third step. You're eating, scrolling, complaining, procrastinating, and you just stand there watching it unfold as if you're an audience member in your own life. The truth is hard to swallow. If you don't interrupt that loop at the point of origin, you'll lose. And you'll lose every day, quietly, steadily, systematically. But there's a strategy that is incredibly simple and incredibly effective for reclaiming control. Interrupt the loop. You don't need to change your entire life. You just need to change 1 second, a single beat in the rhythm of your reflex, one motion that forces your brain to stop running its old program. Because when you break the automatic sequence, you create a gap. And in that gap, you have a choice. You can insert a new behavior, you can decide again, and you can escape the old cycle, not through massive effort, but through a strategic move. The fastest way to interrupt the loop is by changing your physical state. Don't try to sit still and talk yourself out of it. Get up. Move. Do something unexpected with your body. About to open YouTube, stand up and walk away from your chair. About to reach for that snack, step out onto the balcony and take a deep breath. About to procrastinate again, count backward from 5 and step toward your desk. You don't need to do anything dramatic. You just need to break the rhythm. And if you can seize that beat, you can change the behavior. Your brain doesn't like being disrupted. It loves flow, repetition, automation. But that's also its weakness. Because when you disrupt it, when you introduce an unfamiliar signal, the brain is forced back into a conscious state. And that's when you can slip in. Interrupting the loop isn't about resisting temptation with brute force. It's about stepping back, creating a stumble, making the autopilot freeze for 1 second. There's 1 second, and actually enough for you to regain choice. You can use any kind of signal to disrupt the old system. A physical action, clap your hands loudly, snap your fingers, jump up. An audible reaction, say stop out loud, call yourself by name. A sharp question, where is this taking me? And let your brain answer. These small, seemingly odd actions are actually switches that awaken consciousness. And once awareness is switched on, you've got a chance. Maybe you won't always choose the right thing, but at least you're no longer being carried away unconsciously. However, interrupting the loop is just the first step. Once you've created the gap, you need to fill it with a better choice. Because if you don't, the old system will return naturally, powerfully, and without warning. You can't stop at not doing the bad thing. You have to go further. Do the right thing. About to eat from stress? Interrupt the loop, then replace it with a brisk 5-minute walk. About to procrastinate from overwhelm? Interrupt the loop, then open the smallest task and do it for 2 minutes. About to give up? Interrupt the loop, then call someone who will remind you why you started. The interruption is the necessary condition, replacement is the sufficient one. And if you're truly serious, you can increase friction to make the old behavior harder to perform. Create physical barriers, move objects, change positions, delete the app, set a password. Every extra step makes your brain think twice. The more you increase friction with the bad habit, the more it loses momentum. The more you reduce friction with the right behavior, the more it becomes your default path. Behavior design isn't about willpower, it's about convenience. There's one more weapon you can use. Enforce binding commitments, not just verbal promises, but real consequences. create a mechanism that makes you pay a price if you slip. Every time you eat something you shouldn't, donate money to a cause you dislike. Every time you sleep in, force yourself to do a chore you hate. Every time you procrastinate, you lose access to a tool or reward for the day. It may sound extreme, but it works. Because your brain hates loss, and when there's something real to lose, you act differently. Not because you've transformed deeply, but because you have a clear reason not to repeat the old behavior. Interrupting the loop isn't the only strategy, but it's the emergency tactic. Every time you reclaim a single moment, you punch a hole through the automated system that has bound you for years. And if you do that often enough, the system will collapse, slowly but surely. Remember this, you don't need to win the whole day. You just need to win the exact moment when the old habit is about to show up. A few seconds of awareness, one disruptive action, one small decision, and you've just rewritten your future. One loop at a time. No one changes sustainably by keeping promises in their head. You think you can commit silently, promise yourself, starting tomorrow it'll be different. This time I'll be serious. But a few days later, you're back to doing the same old thing. Not because you're weak, but because you have nothing to lose. No binding, no witness, no one holding you accountable. And when no one knows you broke your promise, you allow yourself to break it once, then again, until you no longer believe in your own words. If you want to change for real, you have to change how you commit, not with thoughts, but with a system, by creating a mechanism that makes it impossible to escape, a system with consequences, verification, and feedback, a system that forces you to live up to what you said, even when you don't feel like it. That's when personal responsibility stops being a slogan and becomes an operating structure. The first step is to make your commitment public. When you speak it out loud to a specific person at a specific time, you move a promise from abstract to real, and in that moment pressure begins, because you're no longer just saying it. Now you must answer for it, you must act, you must follow through. That makes your brain take it more seriously. It realizes this time someone's watching. This time there's no way out. Don't choose someone lenient. Don't pick someone who'll forgive you too easily. Choose someone with high standards. Someone whose mere attention makes you feel like you can't get away with mediocrity anymore. You don't need a cheerleader. You need someone to hold you to the path. Someone who'll ask directly, why did you fail? What did you do wrong? What will you do differently next time? Someone who won't let you rationalize, who won't let you repeat the old loop. Someone who'll pull you out of yourself, even when you're tired, lazy, or ready to quit. This isn't just emotional support, this is strategy. Because your brain functions very differently when it knows there will be social consequences. When it's just you, everything feels small. But when someone is expecting a report, tracking your progress, holding you accountable, every misstep feels magnified. And that's what you can leverage. External pressure to strengthen internal behavior. Not so you live for others, but so you rebuild your own self-trust. Next, establish real consequences for each misstep. Not emotional guilt, actual measurable costs. If you want to stop using your phone in the morning but keep giving in, set a condition. Each time you break the rule, you lose $20, 0 cents. If you're trying to stick to your workout routine but keep skipping, sign a pact with a friend. Each time you miss, you pay them. Every time you make the wrong choice, you pay tuition. This isn't a game, it's behavioral science. People act differently when they have something to lose. And when the price for a bad habit is high enough, your brain starts to think twice before slipping. The clearer the system, the less you'll have to internally wrestle. Because now it's not a question of whether you should do the right thing. It's if you don't, you know exactly what happens. No vagueness, no gray area. That transparency is what drives action. Not momentary motivation, but pre-design structure. Alongside this, you must track your progress, because if you don't measure, you won't know where you're going, whether you're advancing, regressing, improving, or just looping. Every habit should have its own tracking system. Mark each day you do it right. Record every milestone. Count your streaks. The longer the streak grows, the less you want to break it. Every day you follow through as a vote for your new identity. And when you see yourself accumulating instead of collapsing, you'll be motivated to keep going. And don't just track numbers, track rewards, because if change is always linked to effort, sacrifice, and loss, you'll burn out fast. Your brain needs a reason to continue, and rewards are the simplest tool. They don't need to be big. A peaceful coffee break, a guilt-free day off, a new book, a small gift, anything that makes you feel change has outcomes. Right behavior gets recognized. Commitment gets rewarded. Most importantly, accountability is not a phase, it's a way of life. Don't just set up a system for 2 weeks and return to your old ways. The system must become your default. It doesn't have to be elaborate, just clear, repeatable, consistent, with a partner, with consequences, with rewards, with tracking, and above all, with a version of you who no longer tolerates being lenient with yourself. You don't need someone to control you forever. But you do need a control mechanism during your weakest phase. And if you survive the hardest days with a system, you'll build a new foundation. A foundation that even when no one's watching, still guides your actions. Because you've become that kind of person. No one builds a meaningful life on inspiration alone. They build it with principles, with structure, with systems that govern behavior. And once you create a framework strong enough, a framework in which bad habits cannot survive, you won't need to rely on discipline anymore. You'll just live inside the system you chose, and you'll become a version of yourself that no one expected, not even the you of today.